Hi guys, it's Luetin and Levelcap here, and we're here for another episode of On the Level. We're talking today about recoil, and also we're going to be talking about the crossbow in Battlefield with Aftermath. So first up, we're looking at recoil, and we're thinking about this in the terms of the change that was made to Battlefield 3 compared to Bad Company 2, but also thinking in a more general sphere, perhaps bringing in the new title, Medal of Honor, as well. And recoil in games is obviously very, very important when it comes to FPS games. It's quite a core principle and a core dynamic mechanic of the game. Level, what's your first thoughts about recoil in general? How it affects the game? Is it a really important thing in the game?
I think recoil is very important in tactical shooters. Now, my gaming history started off with games like Unreal Tournament and Quake 3 Arena and stuff like that, where you had guns that had virtually no recoil, or they just had to spread on the gun instead of recoil. And in those games, I actually feel like having no recoil was beneficial to the gameplay because you moved around so fast that if you're going to add a recoil on top of all this crazy fast-paced gameplay and jumping through the air and all this stuff, it would have been just too much to handle and control with. But because tactical shooters have sort of taken over the market from the arena shooter, you're not moving as fast. You know, you're just peeking corners very slowly and doing slower-based tactics, in which case recoil becomes an excellent mechanic to put in the game because it gives you that extra level of mastery. And I think it's an important thing to have in a tactical shooter by far, because it means that you can enjoy the game from the beginning using easier to use guns, but then once you get better at it, it's just one more thing that you can use to improve your skill with the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I've got quite an interesting video as well coming up later with I've talked to Daskro, and he does a lot of reviews where he looks at actual gun recoil and how the gun handles compared to its in-game counterpart. It's quite interesting to watch his videos, but talking to him about this, he knows a lot about real-life weapons, and it's really, really interesting the things that he was talking about there, how a lot of real guns actually have very, very similar, very, comparable recoil amounts, and often very low compared to their in-game counterparts. And so often the in-game weapons are like quite an exaggeration.
Well, I've heard that the Scar is actually amazingly low recoil from some people who fired it. Like some people who had never fired an assault rifle before fired off a Scar. Yeah. And literally they were like, did it just shoot? Like they're expecting some sort of massive kickback, and a lot of modern weapons have done a lot of cool things to compensate for that recoil. So it's funny that you say that some of the games have exaggerated recoil.
If you go to Daskro's channel, guys, he put up a video about the SKS, and you look at how the SKS fires compared to how it actually fires in game. It's ridiculous. You literally pull the trigger and it's like poof, just nothing happens. It just completely, anyone could fire it, but you compare it to in-game, and okay, it's not significantly bad, but it's very, very different to how it actually handles. But you see, the thing is, like I had this conversation, it's when you have a gun in game, it can't recreate a lot of different things. It can't recreate the volume of actually firing a real weapon, which is extremely high. It can't recreate any of the kickback that you would get from that weapon as well, so firing that recoils back to you, and so it can't compensate those, so they have to try and bring some element into the game to do those things, and they're never going to be able to recreate all those other things. They have to do it in some way. But I think, like you said as well, it's interesting that it comes down to making a difference between players. That's the other thing. When you look at Bad Company 2, for example, some of the guns, in fact most of the guns in Bad Company 2, had almost insignificant recoil compared to the ones in Battlefield 3. And I said, I think I said as well that, I said to you today, I think, that firing the F2000 is literally just like spraying a paint can in Bad Company 2. You literally just pull the trigger and it's like, nothing happens to you at all. You don't even need to think about controlling.
And it's an interesting area that we actually haven't thought of is Counter-Strike recoil. I don't know how familiar you are with that game, but
I did play it some.
Hardcore Counter-Strike players love the screen shake that they add to Counter-Strike, which is kind of like what you might get in real life. If you're firing an automatic weapon, your head isn't going to maintain perfectly stable. It's going to be, you're going to be getting jostled around a little, and they try and recreate that more in Counter-Strike. With each shot out of the gun, all of a sudden you get a screen jolt, And that's something that they don't put into a lot of games. You know, not everybody likes it. Some people don't like it. But even in Battlefield, they tone down the recoil, even though it's considerably higher than, say, Bad Company 2 or, say, Call of Duty.
Yeah, yeah. I can just imagine, though, people hate suppression as it is. Can you imagine how they would hate it if they had, like, head shake in there as well? People would just be raging about it constantly.
I don't know. I liked it in Counter-Strike, and I don't know if it really has a place in other games. It's an interesting mechanic and one that I think old school players appreciate a lot, but I don't know if the new school players would like it too much.
But then just a little bit off topic, suppression, a lot of people complain about that. I honestly have no issue with it whatsoever. I know we have vaguely talked about it before because I know you don't always like mechanics that take control out of the player or so on and so on, but I don't see the issue. I think they've tried to recreate a fairly justifiable mechanic, and I think, it's an interesting element for the game,
Yeah, I think it's, you know what, you got to give DICE props for trying to implement new things like this into the game. I think they definitely had it overboard at one point in the game where it was just like, okay, that's a little bit much. And I think they haven't explored it to its fullest extent. Like the recon class becomes useless when it's suppressed, where the other classes you can still take down a guy while you're suppressed because you've got 30 rounds in a magazine. Some of those are going to hit your opponent, but recon is just like, well, forget it. You're not going to hit anybody with that bolt action. So I think if they had taken away some of the effects of suppression on maybe the sniper classes or some of the other classes, it would have been a little bit better balanced.
I think suppression is one thing. I think also like fragmentation explosions, I think the effect from those should be significantly higher than it is. I know people may hate the idea of that, but I think it would make the game...
what do you mean the effect? Like screen?
No, I mean, like, let's say you're hiding in a bunch of rocks or you're next to a building and a tank shell lands next to you. I'm pretty sure you would be deafened and sort of your brain would be like... I mean, think about the shockwave from an impact. No,
they kind of do that already, but
a little bit, but
it's not Saving Private Ryan.
No, but it's like you recover in a few seconds, which I think it should be extended because the shockwave from that alone is so
You're going to have to go to the medical tent and put some cotton balls in your ears.
Yeah, or just like you lose your vision, for maybe 1-2 seconds. It just really... I mean, did you ever play... This is, again, it kind of relates into the thing, but did you ever play Perfect Dark for the N64?
No, I didn't.
Okay, they have this thing on this called the Tranquilizer. Did you ever see this or on any videos or anything? No?
I think so.
The Tranquilizer was ridiculous. It was basically this little alien gun, I think. And you could fire it. It literally looked weird. It looked like a little plastic handheld thing with an egg on top. It was bizarre. And you fired it, and it just made this little, like, noise. It was just nothing. It sounded like you're firing like a little paper dart or something. You'd fire this at people, and basically when you hit them, their entire screen would go this kind of hallucinogenic colours and just blurry, like. And the more you did it, the worse it got. But I think the funny thing as well, you could actually run up to people and then inject it into them, so you didn't have to just fire it. So the more you clicked like that, the worse it got. So if you ran up to someone and went like click, 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 you could inject them like 15 times with this mad hallucinogenic tranquilizer, and literally it slowed down the screen movement and it just went crazy. You couldn't see a thing. You're just walking around like, I can't see. It's just, I love the idea of just maybe having these.
Hey, maybe we can write a letter to the devs and have them put in an extra tranquilizer bolt for the crossbow.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll transition into this whole area. We can bring Rico back. Yes, I did indeed. Yeah. Crossbow. What's your thoughts? Because you want to talk about this so badly. Go on.
Okay, so I did my review of the crossbow on there, and like almost every other comment, because I said that this thing didn't exist, and technically the crossbow in the game that they have designed doesn't exist, but there are military grade crossbows out there that do exist, and I guess some special force units actually do use them, so that's cool. My main gripe with it is that it looks like it's supposed to have been fashioned in the battlefield or something.
I heard your comment about this before. It did make me laugh, actually.
And I looked at it and I was just like, well, do you have any idea how hard it would be to make an accurate crossbow in the battlefield? It wouldn't have bothered me so much if it was like a pre-built crossbow, like a military grade crossbow that they found in the wreckage or whatever, or anything. It doesn't even have to be repaired. You could just find it, somebody had it in their house, you find the crossbow, that wouldn't bother me as much. So that was kind of my main gripe with it, was just the look of it. Like, I don't like, you know, backyard fashion crossbow that can headshot a guy from 50 meters. Like, I don't think so. But I think it'll be interesting. I got to play with it. I like the idea of having multiple bolts in it and stuff. I'm definitely a bit cautious about it because it does feel like they're kind of taking it into a little bit of an arcadey realm with a crossbow. I think we'll see.
It could fit very well into the gameplay style, which I want to say, from what we've seen from Aftermath, looks unbelievably like what we predicted on our other videos. I was very pleased. I don't know whether they were listening to us, but the whole discussion that we had before, talking about how we thought Aftermath was going to be, what it was going to be like, it looks actually very, very on par with what we discussed before, which I'm really pleased about. It looks really intense kind of gunplay, close quarters to medium range gunplay, but also I love the look. They've gone with exactly what we thought, which is all these kind of lightweight vehicles running around, people jump out, bam, 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 you know, and it's all that kind of stuff. I can really sing it being a lot of fun. I also think there is potentially a nice role for snipers in this, because often on our very large open maps that are either too close quarters or too big to really have snipers play a very strong role. I really like the idea that if you've got this kind of broken down, rubbly, destroyed area, you can have a nice little sniper holed up in some building somewhere, covering an objective, and you know, he can really play that role as sniper, you know, strong discipline, really take targets out. But I think as well, that's where the crossbow thing comes in, you know, because with the crossbow you could have the potential to be really moving around quite stealthily, and then you can just eliminate targets. So you can have people moving around in the cover, really getting into all the buildings and stuff like that. So I think it's got a good potential in terms of gameplay to play out and add some sort of more, perhaps stronger stealth elements that we haven't seen before, you know?
I think I'm most looking forward to the motion sensor bolt. You
Yeah.
know, because I missed the motion grenade from Bad Company
Me too.
It was always so cool throwing that into a building and like, oh, there's 3 guys in that building there. Just quick to deploy, quick to get around the map. From a tactical standpoint, that's going to be probably one of the biggest benefits that it brings. We'll see what the explosive bolt's like. I hope they don't make it too powerful, because let's be honest, an explosive bolt on a crossbow shouldn't be able to destroy like a lightly armored vehicle. You know, it should be.
How much would you want to see it? What percent? If you're thinking about light armored vehicles and stuff like we've seen, the little.
Well, I don't think it can be on par with a SMAW. You know, SMAR's got a little warhead on the tip of it. You know, RPGs have many. They're bigger than grenades, so I would feel more comfortable with almost like a grenade level of explosion at the end of this.
That's not going to do much to a vehicle, though. But I suppose maybe it's got a more directed, you know, sort of impact or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. See, it gets hard to balance, because then if you're running around with SMAWs and explosive tips crossbows, it's like, where do you balance that? You know, you can't give everybody.
Maybe it'll have maybe it has very direct splash damage, you know, very specific, because the other thing is, if it's going to be that powerful that it can actually damage vehicles, think about what that could do to personnel. Like if you know, for example, okay, let's say there's like a bit of a bottleneck, 3-4 guys there, maybe they're not all bunched together, you fire an explosive bolt, how many of those guys is it going to kill? You know, how many would you like to see that take down? 2 out of 4? I mean, you know,
I think it also, like, they haven't really explained how your ammo is going to work. Are you going to start out with all 4 bolts? Are you are those bolts only going to be available in scavenger mode where you have to find them? Like, is it just going to be a normal crossbow in the game? So that'll be interesting. Like, if it came with all 4 bolts, I think that would be unfairly overpowered to give to each
I do
class.
like the fact that I think they've made a safe bet as well by allowing each class to take it, and I'll tell you why. Because I think if they gave it to only one class, the obvious thing that's going to happen is when the DLC comes out, everyone's going to play that class because they want to play the crossbow. So by giving it to each class, it means that we're going to be able to keep a more balanced momentum in terms of class play.
Smart. It's smart.
So that's going to help. It means we won't get one class domination throughout. It means that people can comfortably play what they want to play in order to gain the objective and work well as a team, but they can try out the new stuff as well. So I think that's a good decision to make on DICE's part there, you know?
Yeah. Oh, you know what would be interesting, actually? I was just trying to think about how they're actually going to implement the ammo, because I was like, wait a minute, they can't actually put all 4 bolts for, like, one crossbow. Like, you can't just start out with all that. What if they allow you to either unlock them and then equip them in, like, same with shotgun ammo type? It might be something like that.
that seems much more likely to me, because I can't imagine they would have it changeable in game. So I think it'll be a menu choice like shotguns, I think, for example.
And then you can give classes like the Recon, which basically has nothing that it can do against vehicles, and you can give it the explosive tip crossbow. And the Recon already has motion sensor, so you don't have to worry about the motion sensor. And then maybe give the assault class the motion sensor crossbow, and all of a sudden he becomes much more effective at like determining where enemies are, can almost become a hybrid Recon class. I do like the versatility that it could potentially bring to the game.
Yeah, it could allow a little bit more versatility between classes, which could impact onto the rest of the game as well. So yeah, it could be really, really interesting. I assume that, as with the previous DLCs, it'll be the case that once you've got it for the DLC, you've got it for the other game modes as well. So
they confirm that.
Yeah, so that's a really good thing that people want to know, because it means that you can go back and take it onto all the people that don't have it, which is always going to be fun. But let's really, really quickly, just to wrap up, we just think a little bit about scavenger mode. Now, what's your thoughts about this? I'm not too sure on it, because I didn't ever really particularly take to the what the hell is it called? Gun. What's it? I'll call this back
Gunmaster.
Okay. I didn't really take to the Gun Master mode, because I always felt it was one of these things where there's a too high of a luck element involved. You know, you start off with the first guns, you get a few lucky kills maybe, or maybe you get a few skill kills, but either way, whoever gets that first step up suddenly has a big advantage over everyone else. Now, I know that's how that game plays out. I know that's the gameplay. However, this scavenger mode feels very much like that again, and even perhaps worse, because if it's random that you're running around and you just find weapons, well, okay, what happens to the very first people that they pick up some amazing weapon, bam, they've immediately got a very, very strong advantage and potentially a game-changing lead over everyone else. I don't like those kind of things. I feel it's unfair, and at least with the other game modes you can have your own kit and stuff, so everyone starts on a relatively fair playing field. But if you're just starting from point blank,
it does run the risk of becoming almost identical to an arena shooter in that way, where if you ever watch the top Quake 3 players, they would have their little routes that they traveled the map to make sure that they always got their rocket launcher, or this gun or that gun. So it becomes just
that still happens now in any public games. Yes, it's a weapon race. It still happens anytime. If I go on Unreal now, even, it's the same deal. You know, people, you just go straight in, and there's 3 or 4 guys who know the perfect, you know, they know the kind of almost racing line to get to these weapons. And I have a fear factor that it's going to be like that. However,
but they have said that they're going to balance it by giving you only, say, 2 magazines if you pick up an assault rifle, so you can use it and then you have to switch back to your sidearm or whatever. So I like the aspect of forcing people to use a big variety of weapons, you know, with attachments that you might not be used to. I think that'll be kind of fun in terms of like, okay, you're good with the M16, but are you also good with the machine gun or a PDW or something random, you know? So it's going to be a good test of like your overall skill with the game.
I do like that aspect, and it will benefit players like myself, because I don't align myself to any specific class setup in terms of, I mean, there was a bit of talk about this with some other guys I was discussing this week as well. I think it was on Reddit, and there was people talking about, you know, people are always looking for that god setup. They're looking for the perfect class that they can run in all situations. I never run like that, because I always feel that, you know, you need to tailor your kit to specific situations, specific maps, who are you playing with, what's your plan for the game. So I tend to change my kit out round and again. I know that has downsides as well as positives, but for those reasons, the general way that I play the game, I like the idea of having a more balanced setup. And I know when I've played games in the past as well, you know, different games all around, and they've had this kind of random setup. That's another thing that's so good about Arena, is that you had to be a good all-around player. You couldn't just be, you know, one guy doing this certain task. You had to always be kind of an all-around player, which I really liked, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's true. And honestly, I think good games do a good job of balancing between the classes, so that one class isn't particularly better than the other ones. You know, it forces you to pick the appropriate class for the appropriate situation.
Okay guys, so today we've been taking a look at Recoil and the crossbow, and also discussing Aftermath. As always, we'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. How balanced do you think the crossbow is going to be when it comes to Aftermath? Are you excited by the gameplay there? Do you think it's going to play out? Will it be better than the other DLCs we've seen so far? Always interested to hear your thoughts, and we'll see you for another episode of On The Level very soon.